All right, we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Lunchtime Chats. I'm Christina with Rise of the Multidimensional Human and the Lightbody Academy. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm late getting going here, so I'm gonna give everybody a minute to hop on. And in the meantime, I am going to pull up the topics for today. All right. Here we go. I needed to throw something in my face because my blood sugar was dropping. Welcome, everybody. Okay. Let me get the topics up for today, and then we will dive right in. Go ahead and, when you jump on, go ahead and say hello. Let me know you're here, darlings. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Here we are. All right, this is on mute. Okay, here we go. All right, guys, welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi, Hodai. Hi, Facebook user. So glad to have you guys here again for another exciting chat. All right, now for those of you who are new, my name is Christina. I'm the acceleration expert. And we are here to talk about the topics and issues that are significant for us intuitive visionaries and new paradigm way showers, the stuff that's significant for us in our daily lives as we learn how to navigate these challenging times with autonomy, with sovereignty, and in that we discover a whole nother way of being. So welcome everybody to the topics that we're here to talk about today. All right, so for those of you who are participating in the Rise of the Multidimensional Human group, the dear brother Starshine posted a movie that he made, that he produced, and it was pretty much about his channelings with different deity godheads, let's call them, such as Buddha and Christ and Krishna and stuff like this. Now, a lot of you guys know my thoughts around that, about deity. And what I want to, so I'm just turning you guys on to that movie. His name's Hale, because the things that I'm talking about today were all themes that he brought up and even exemplified in certain aspects of that movie. And it was super cool timing that I watched it when I did, because I was already thinking about these topics anyway, because of other conversations that you guys are in with me. For those of you who are in the Rise group, you guys send me messages and I think about the different things that are going on that you share with me. And that's how we develop the topics for our chats. So I was already on a certain stream of thought, consciousness stream, when I watched Deer Hill's movie, and that just helped me pull it all together. And I'm super stoked to talk about them. So one thing we're going to be talking about is past life recall. So what people don't realize, so people think the thought is that when you come to this planet, you have to forget all your lives. And that is so until it's not. The more you clean up your blind spots, the more you wake up to other aspects of who you are because of these veils thinning, the more at your access those past life recalls are. The problem is that we don't know very often that those are past life situations that we're recalling. Okay, so in the scope of how I want to talk about past life recall is that, number one, most of us are having past life recall and don't realize it. And then I'm going to point out some specific things that is indicative of a past life memory versus a thought or an energy from something else, or a parallel timeline or a consciousness stream. So I'm going to talk about that. And I'm going to talk about channeled messages and transmissions. So a few of you were, trying to nail me down on where I'm at with channeling, because some of my past chats, the way I've expressed my view of channeling, it seemed like I was not so keen on the idea. And so I want to make that clear, what I was trying to say in those pieces, and also provide a lens for you guys when you're encountering channeled material. Because channeled material is very helpful in the awakening process, but there's some imbalances going on with it, and people give up their sovereignty and their autonomy to channeled messages very often. Not always, but often. And it could be the people receiving the messages, but also the ones channeling the message. I mean, there's lots of layers in that engagement where the distortions happen. So I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If I'm drawn to listen to a channeling, I'm going to listen to it. 99.9% of the time, what happens is that there's key consciousness streams that are very clearly conveyed, and I get a beautiful download, but and I don't agree with most of what's said at the same time. So that's how I experience channelings most often. Not always. The clearer the channel, the clearer the information, the clearer the delivery, the the more it resonates for me usually. So I talk about Barbara Handclough and the Alchemy of the Nine Dimensions and that whole body of work. That was that's channeled material. But it's channeled not by a being that is not Barbara, but it was channeled by Barbara of another aspect of herself that is simultaneously incarnating in the Pleiades, you see? So it's a different kind of deal going on with that. All right, and then we're also going to talk about blind spots and the turning of the ages. So one of the profound things in that movie that I really enjoyed was the talking about the yugas, the different Yuga cycles. These are very long cycles of consciousness that humanity goes through. And a lot of people weave it into the new paradigm understandings, which I totally get. And we want to talk more about that because the yugas right now, we're at the end of something called the Kali Yuga, which is the very end of a full spectrum, 4 quarters of a cycle, right? So each Yuga cycle goes like this, right? And the Kali Yuga is the end of I'm not really sure where in this drawing the end of the Kali Yuga is, but pretty much it's each of these are divided into quarters, and the last quarter is the Kali Yuga cycle, which is the end of this whole cycle. Now there's things to really be clear about with this because guys, I talk about those layers, those nesting dolls within nesting dolls within nesting dolls that create realities. Okay, this is a vibration that is one of these that's connecting us to the consciousness stream of one of these outer nesting dolls. Okay. All right. So I'll circle back around and go more into that. So those are the things that we're here to talk about. I'm going to check in, say hello to all my dear starshines and the family, and say hello, dear Shelly, Facebook user, and Dale, hello, and Tammy. Tammy says, what is the movie you mentioned, Christina? The movie is, I can't remember the name of it, but Hale posted it in the Rise group. And I think he also posted it in the Sasquatch group. So that's the best I could do. I don't remember the name of it. It's terrible. Can you believe it? I talk about movies I don't remember the name of. All right, dear Facebook user says, I find that channeled information activates aspects of some kind of remembering within myself. Yes, exactly. That is why I do listen to, when I'm drawn to listen to channeled material, I listen to it. And it's interesting because it's like, you can tell that the channeler is really interested in certain aspects of the channeling, but usually the part that I'm resonating with and that opens me up to other things are kind of like on the side note of what it is that they're really saying. And so what's happening when someone's channeling is that they're actually shifting their vibration to meet a particular resonance in a consciousness stream. And once you're tuned into that consciousness stream, you can download messages, you can get information and you can have conversations with other beings. When I say other beings, I'm not just talking about gods and goddesses, the deity thing, but I'm also talking about ETs and nature spirits and planetary consciousness and galactic consciousness and stuff like this. Excuse me. So channeling is really useful in that way. What happens is that, there's identities that get put on things, and we are looking at something from behind our own eyes, even as a channeler from behind your own eyes, and everything that you're, touching on is getting connected to that sense of presence behind the eyes, right? So there's these associations that start to happen. And I want to talk a little bit about how I've unearthed my own past life memories, okay? So I didn't realize I was remembering past lives until I started encountering certain kinds of channeled material. And so Barbara Handclough was one of those people where I read that just a single piece in a Pleiadian agenda where she talked about the alchemy of the 9 dimensions, and I knew I had to read every paragraph like 5 times just to get what's going on, but I knew something huge was opening up inside of me, something that I was never able to touch before. I was given perspectives and ideas and the sharing of stories that opened me up to things I never considered possible before. And it was quite literally opening me up for a massive download or upload, if you will. Okay. So it's like when a person is very cleanly and clearly in that consciousness stream and is able to convey that without too much, without much distortion. There's always going to be a little bit of distortion because, like I said, you're seeing things from behind the presence, behind your eyes, right? So you're framed up by the human experience a bit. But when you're sharing in that consciousness stream, it's a resonance, right? It's resonating within your body. It's resonating within your being. And as you share it, no matter what the mode is, if it's written or verbal or music or performance art or whatever, your actions are now in the expression of that consciousness stream. Okay. And that is what brings it into the 3D. So when people it's that act, that act of resonant conveyance, let's call that is what's activating me when I'm listening to channeled material. It's not necessarily the story or whatever the narrative is that's being shared. Right. So what happened was, Barbara was trained by her grandparents, to not lose her multidimensional perception. So when it came time for that to come out of her, it was very clean and clear. So as I read each paragraph 5 times, I was getting these downloads and I didn't understand what to do with it, but I had to pause and sit with each piece because what was happening, it was like hitting a clunk deep inside my core, deep inside my body. And it was like, I knew it was like I was experiencing absolute truth for the first time. And as that opening happened inside my subconscious and unconscious mind, there was this spectrum of knowing that all of a sudden was available to me that I didn't have before. So it took me a long time to get through just that chapter because I was digesting all of that. And then it took me another decade or so to unpack all of those spectrums that were open of perception that were opening up to me. Okay. So what's happening here is that we're going into this other paradigm. We're leaving this Kali Yuga for either a space in between or something new. And we are in all of the veils of separation are lifting. If we stay distracted in these inner nesting dolls that aren't out here, we can miss the boat, so to speak, right? I mean, of course not. If it's your truth and you're here to do that, you're going to do that no matter what, even if on your deathbed. So don't worry, you're not going to miss the boat. If you're here, you're not missing the boat, right? So, so it's like the channeled material is more about the sharing of the consciousness stream than the actual story of the material itself, if that makes sense. The story is helpful because it plants ideas that your conscious mind can be aware of, but most of what's happening with the channeled stuff it's stuff that your conscious mind cannot be aware of because it's too foreign. It's too divergent from the frequency you're used to perceiving on. So as you grow in the resonance and the kinds of frequencies your conscious mind can touch, then these other pieces from these downloads will start coming online. Okay. This is how past life recall is, at least it is for me. I'll have an experience and maybe something will come into a dream. And then I'll have like these distant thoughts about a scenario. And sometimes it's traumatic. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a beautiful love story, but it'll be out here somewhere. It's there. I can touch it a little bit with my awareness, but it's not really landing the impact, the meaning, the purpose of me remembering of it isn't really hitting me yet. It often takes months or even years of unpacking these pieces for the memory to fully come forward, and it's memory, but it's not memory just to have it. There's a purpose to why you're having that memory. There's a purpose to why your deep inner levels are bringing you that memory to unpack. Okay. So, and of course, some of my first memories that were getting unpacked were my memories of being in Lemuria, my memories as being a Hyperborean, and then memories as being a Sasquatch. memories of Atlantis. You know, the whole unfolding of the Atlantean War, Lemurian Atlantean War. I have that in memory. I've never heard anybody talk about it until very recently that I start to hear other humans talk about a dynamic like that. Okay, and maybe it's been well known in the human circles, and I just didn't know it. That's totally possible. I do kind of stay in my my focus of interest. But so I was having those memories, and they weren't really matching the channel stuff I was getting, or that I was sensing that was out there and having contact with. So I just kind of never really talked about it. And then and as things unfolded more and more and more, I realized there was a lot of important things for me to unpack in the dynamic between the Atlantean Lemurian wars. And that whole shift, that moment of that, I say a moment, it really took many thousands of years, but that moment where the consciousness shifted into, a denser level, and the forgetfulness was happening. The forgetfulness is first your forgetfulness to the source, being an expression of source. And then the forgetfulness is forgetting where you came from in your history. You're forgetting your star family, forgetting where you came from on that level. And then the forgetfulness after that is no longer being able to recall your past lives, as in you no longer recall that you are a being that is beyond this singular life walk. Okay, in this body on this planet. So the forgetting happened in stages, and the full-on forgetting is being born and not realizing at all that you're an infinite being in a body. You are who you're told you are. You are who your experiences tell you are. You are who, you know what I mean? You are who the constructs tell you are, right? And that's where the ego driver has now fully taken over in making the choices in your life. And the interesting thing about this is that your inner knowing could be broad, it could be vast, but if it's not translating in the way you be, and it's not translating in the actions you take, it means nothing. I know that's frustrating, but that's how it is, right? All right, dear Joanne, hello, thank you for the flower. Howdy, Nancy. All right, so Hodai says, yes, when I first read The Alchemy of the Nine Dimensions, I picked up and put it down many times. I think the book material came to me as a precursor to my awakening. Pretty awesome when it all clicked. Yes, it was precursor for mine too, because that's also at that same time that I was working with the Pleiadian agenda. I was in a major life change, and I had to quit work because of I was pregnant, and my morning sickness was absolutely awful. It was like I was losing weight instead of gaining weight. It was like, I was kind of like in crisis mode. Anyway, and I was also trained in meditation, trained in mantras, trained in full body prayer. I mean, I had training and I had embraced some of those mystery school paths that still held the frequencies, of the information, the memory of our true past as human beings, right? So all of those came into play in me digesting what was being awoke. Now, I was digesting the material like cognitively, intellectually, but energetically, there was this whole bigger dynamic going on. And to this day, I reference her work all the time because it is so potent, because it does awaken this kind of thing. You don't need to understand anything about it. You just seeing the symbolism being in my energy and other people's energies who have awoke to it. That's all it requires. And then on a deep subconscious level, when you're in that, yet when it's time, for you to wake up, the transmission opens up, and boom, you all of a sudden have that epiphany and you're aware. Your ego driver has no choice in the matter. You're just there. And this is also where we start to realize that our ego driver is just a portion of who we are. There's all these other nesting dolls that are creating our experience. And our ego driver has been trained to focus on a very narrow bandwidth of these nesting dolls as to inform us on what our experience is about. Okay. So circling back around, I know it sounds like I'm criticizing channeling, and I can understand why that's so, but really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to split a fine hair here, because there are many masters who have walked upon this earth who had amazing teachings, but almost actually every time. I don't know a time where it hasn't been twisted, but every time when that teacher is no longer holding that vibration on this planet, the teachings get twisted, they get hijacked and somehow deformed into something that is disempowering for humanity, you know, for the humans that are working those teachings. And I know in the old paradigm that was the point, was to forget so deeply, you know, to forget so deeply you would have this deep experience of separation and not being connected, let alone being part of source, right? But now we're opening up into this new paradigm. We're coming from the Kali Yuga age to a whole nother age. And what's significant about this is that there's something called the place in between. And the place in between, no one really talks about. Most people talk about the dawning of the golden age. But I really want to, for those, because you guys that are here for this kind of conversation, you're aware more than probably most, and or many, I should say most, whatever. It's just that there's a place in between where we do not need to continue to partake and participate in the unfoldment of the yugas. Okay, the yugas is this whole big thing, and then the Kali yugas are like the sections of it, right? So it's split into 4 sections. So there is research that has been done where they've actually tracked the Milky Way in its orbit. So we have our sun that's traveling through the space at a very, very high velocity. And then there's the planets that are spiraling around the sun as it travels, right? So we are orbiting around the sun and the sun is traveling. So there's that kind of thing. But the other thing is that our galaxy is traveling as well. And from the, I can't remember the name of the astronomer, but actually I think it was a whole collection of astronomers made this model of what it looked like, what the orbit of the galactic looked like. And it was this exact shape, except it continued. It wasn't just this finite shape. As this crossed over, it started a whole nother. Oh, look at that. That's activating, isn't it? Uh-huh. Okay. So in this way, guys, in this way, the exploration, light and dark, good and evil, continues on and on and on. But if you notice, there's these places in between, right? There's these places in between, right? Like this is an in between. Here, let me color it in so you can see it. Right? There's these places in between where we have the opportunity, because all the veils are lifted, the blinders are lifted, we have an opportunity to wake up to ourselves on another level. Actually, those stories that we have about Christos, Krishna, you know, the avatars, they are beings that manifested themselves out of their will onto this plane. How do they do that? Or, you know, where do they come from? All of this. So we're given the story that they are expressions of particular deity. Let me get this other drawing here so I can. All right, pause for a second. I have to go back to this shape again. You guys can see this, okay? All right, so I'm going back to this shape again. Right? Good. Okay. So what I want to say is there's like, let's take the story of Krishna. And I really love the way Hale talked about it, because it took a lot of the religious dogma out of it. And I'm not here to, I don't want to offend any Hindus or anything. That's not what I'm, you guys know, I'm not for any religion whatsoever, because it's all, for me, in my perceptions, it's programming. It's programming to some of the most highest levels that humans had access to for a really long time. So in a way, if anything, I'm jaded about religions because of the hijacking of the messages. Anyway, let me get back to, so they're talking about Krishna and Lakshmi being the only two manifestations of Vishnu. Okay, now this is a cosmic arena identity that is being shared with you in that story. Okay, Vishnu, not a galactic being, is a cosmic being that holds all these realities and nesting dolls, right? Holds the galactic plane and nesting dolls that had a thought. That thought separated out as a frequency and manifested as those avatars. Okay. And this is the piece that we wake up to when we're opening our eyes in the places in between, that we ourselves are a result of being in this outer nesting doll, right? We are a thought. We are a speck, a piece of stardust that has come from that and has traveled through the dimensional planes. Now, when people believe that there is a God that created their soul, they don't go beyond these nesting dolls in their awareness. They stay there. It's like, oh, okay, this is it. But there's more. And this is what multidimensionals they're waking up in the places in between what we wake up to. Not only is there a creator being on a cosmic level, but there's more. There's multiverse beyond that. There's omniverse beyond that. There's all these, I mean, if I were to try to express this, with this drawing, these nesting dolls would keep going out, 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 out. It goes on and on and on. There is no end. Okay. So and this is why, I talk about things being a God poison, is because a lot of beings stop with the Godhead that they believe is the Godhead or goddess head or whatever. Okay. But there's more. Okay. So there's beings that have been part of this Yuga cycle for eons upon eons upon eons. And they have an opportunity to wake up in between cycles, because each of these Yuga cycles is the expression of light and dark, good and evil, okay? Unity and separation. So in the places in between these cycles is the doorway for one to wake up to themselves and become a realized being in the human form, in the physical form. And that is what Krishna is. That's what the Christ is. That's what these different avatars that we have in our history, that's what they are. They're awakened beings. They're awakened to who they are beyond the God source. They need no intermediary between their consciousness and that of the omniverse consciousness. And the story is that this avatar comes to this planet every so many thousand years, millions years, every point in this cycle to reclaim life again for the light, to reclaim life again for the life of the universe, the well-being of all, like this, And this time around, what is different, and this is what I resonate with, you may not, you guys let me know if you resonate with this. This time around, what is different is that this beingness that we call the Christ or the Krishna or whatever, this beingness has come back to the planet, but it has come en masse. It has come as many beings haven't awoke to who they are on those grander nesting doll levels, not just one. Okay. That's what I resonate with, that we're many beings waking up to the truth of who we are on those levels. And that is what is reclaiming this reality for a whole something else. It's possible. The opportunity is there. Whether we take it or not, we'll see. I know I'm taking it. That's definitely a yes for me, right? All right, I'm going to pause right there to see what you guys are talking about. All right. Okay, Joanne says she's resonating with what I'm saying. Cool. Thank you for that. So there is no good, bad, right, and wrong. It's all about that resonance match. What is that you're matching? You can wake up your DNA. You just need to have the environment that's conducive to the waking up. And this is where the en masse thing becomes even more important, because we support each other with our resonance, with the awakening. This is why we need to connect more and more every day. It's like so important for us to have community. That's really hitting us hard during this whole, shenanigans that's happening. So it's like, the number one priority is connection, connection, connection. Connect with others, connect with other people who are resonating, connect, you know what I mean? And feed that resonance through the numbers. And the more numbers we add to the resonance, the bigger it becomes and the easier it is for others to wake up. Now, many of you who've, met me in person, that's been fed. This is a feedback that I've gotten a lot, is that when people meet me in person, they're hanging out in my energy. It's like they can see things so much more clearly than they ever have before. When they're tracking or when they're just looking or when they're channeling or whatever, it's clearer than it ever has been before for them. And that's because those are the fields, the consciousness streams that are moving through me unhindered. And some might perceive that as me giving transmissions all over the place, but really what it is that you're carrying the receptor site and you're calling for that kind of consciousness stream to make contact with you. It's no conscious thing on my behalf. I'm just here doing what I do, and other people are getting the benefits in the ways that are appropriate for them. So, and this is why it doesn't matter if you agree. It doesn't matter if you agree with the things that we say, and it doesn't matter if you agree with a certain kind of channeling or anything at all. It's about the resonance. If that resonance is opening you up to something that you before weren't able to access, then it's doing its job. It's working. Okay. All right, let's get to, all right. So dear Facebook user says, feel this similar reference have been popping up and also the space between, but haven't seen the two linked like this before. Okay, cool. All right. We've been programmed to be lesser than these avatars and archetypes. I believe the reality, they are pieces of us and we, them, the separation piece dissolved. Right. So coming back into waking, this is why, that going back to the stages of closing down the conscious, disconnecting one humanity from source, right? Those different stages I talked about with the fall of Atlantis and Lemuria. So we are unlocking those stages as we speak, right? So the nesting, the veils are lifting. These nesting dolls of perception are more available to us than ever before. And it's just a matter of quieting down, focusing inward, and paying attention. Paying attention while in these interactions, paying attention to this is the big key, because you're going to recognize that there are things going on that are different than how you've been in relationship to them before. And it usually starts with either a relationship with an exospecies, an ET, a non-corporeal being, a nature spirit, a deva, a Sasquatch, anything like that. It can start off like that, right? For a lot of you, it has. But for others, it'll start off with having past life recall. You'll have recollections of something, information, consciousness that is either within the Akasha or within the telluric realm. It'll start surfacing into your awareness. Now, you're not going to know what to do with it. Most people don't know what to do with it. You have to, we've never been taught on how to grow transmissions, on how to melt our blind spots. We've never been taught. And that's why this work I'm doing now with the Academy is so profound, because it's like, we've got it. We have got what it needs to unravel those blind spots, no matter how deep they go, no matter how expanded, you know what I mean? It's like, there's no place we can't touch with the unraveling of those blind spots. So I'm really, I guess proud is the word of what we're doing with Lightbody, because we've solved it. But now it's just a matter of walking that path of unraveling those blind spots. Many of us have memories of being in these nesting dolls beyond, being those nesting dolls that are holding this Yuga cycle together. Okay. And connecting with elementals, I'm discovering on another layer here, is so essential for this, because the elementals have those memories, hold those records uncorrupted, that go back to these levels of existence, these nesting dolls of realities that we once embodied on this planet. And so when we get to like the pyramids, the pyramid complexes, the mounds, the sacred sites, people marvel and try to figure it out. But really, when you are tuning into the telluric aspect of what's going on there, you'll find that each of those sites have something that maybe you can call a hall of records. you know, and if you can slow yourself down enough and silence yourself for long enough, those hollow records will open and people have downloads. People have major awakening experiences being in these sites, because the telluric realm is a completely woven into the records, the memories of those species, those levels of consciousness that built those structures. Now, different races built different structures. So Egyptian is definitely, in my perception, a reference and reverence to the Atlantean culture. But then you have other kinds of pyramids that are not necessarily based in that, like the ones in Central and South America, the ones that I've been exposed to anyway. There may be more that I don't know anything about, so leaving that there. In my perception, those were more of the Lemurian flavor of pyramids. The knowledge that was used to build them was anchored within the different species of Hyperboreans, Sasquatch, and different insectoid races. Now, the insectoid races are getting a bad rap. There is a lot of crap. There is a lot of distortions, just like with AITI, but it's really getting cleaned up a lot. So when you're talking about the battle of light and good, light and dark, and all this stuff, and who's on what line, it's not a clear division, right? Because these are expressions. These are beings that are carrying out a role. These are being from out here. It's a being carrying out a role that they have in this expression. So just because something is fighting on the light doesn't mean that is a benevolent light being. And just because some being is fighting in the dark doesn't mean that it is, that's all it is this dark being. It's a consciousness life force that's playing a role. The role is happening because we're creating new opportunities for something new to happen, new ways to separate, new ways to heal, new ways to create fracture, new ways to heal the fracture. You know what I mean? We're experiencing all this stuff, and that's the point of these yugas, right? So we can have that kind of experience. But the pieces here. Oh yeah, so I can tell already. These pieces that I'm bringing together are busting you guys out of some belief systems. These belief systems of a being higher than us is really important to address, because if we worship and glorify whatever we worship and glorify, it will become stronger and stronger and stronger. Anything that we feed our attention to, our awareness to, it becomes stronger, 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 stronger. Right now, people are really in that strife. So maybe a lot of their attention, awareness, emotional energy is going towards their aversions to things, right? It's hard not to these days. But imagine if you had such a solid vision for yourself, for your impact in the world, for your role for being here on this planet, where that was your guiding force, where that was the influencer of your daily actions versus this other stuff. Okay? I'm not saying this is a criticism. Please don't take it that way. It's more of an invitation to imagine what that would be. Because here, this is what happens. If you don't know who you are on these certain levels, okay, but you hear a story from somebody else, from a channeling or whatever, a book or whatever, you hear a story that takes your awareness to this level, right? Now you are going to become, this is just human nature, you're going to become attached to what that initial story was telling you about this level. But what if that initial story just simply woke you up to that consciousness stream and that nesting doll of who you are, but that's not actually describing the role you had at that level? You see what I mean? Now you understand, okay, so when we get open to something for the first time by somebody or something or whatever, we hold that in special reverence. It's important to be in gratitude with things that wake you up, but it's also important to let that go and see what else comes. That is how you get to explore the unknown. Okay, you're going into a place where you can observe something for the first time ever. The reason why you needed that story was because of those blind spots were so heavy, you would have never got there on your own. So the story came into your experience, it opened you up. Wow, right? A whole new world, whole new universe, and now you're cooking, and it keeps going. right? And in the keep going, very often, that's where we have to recognize who we truly are on other levels on the outer nesting doll, which means letting go of the story that got you to that opening. And so you can go on to keep going, right? Let me check in. Just chiming in. Hello, dear Christina. All right. All right. So Joanne says, yes, it was past life recall in the 70s. Many scenarios came as I opened to other aspects of myself at the time. I want to look more deeply into the Bosnian pyramids, which are larger than those in Egypt. Dr. Sam Osmagic, that's it, Osmagic, all right, is the fellow to Google. Yes, actually, we went there 2 falls ago in 2019. We went there as a group. And yes, those pyramids in particular are the oldest, and they were constructed not by Atlanteans or Egyptians. They're much older than that. And what brought us there was a relationship between Sasquatch and the ant people, and it was the exploration of the transmissions and different kinds of consciousness awakening inside of us in relationship to the ant people. So the ant people, you can say, are telluric beings. They are ancient beings of this planet, but they also evolved in other planets. They originated there. Well, just say there is a race of ant people that originated here on this planet. And they were the master builders. They were the master builders of those ages. And I'm talking, when I say ages, I'm talking millions of years ago, guys, millions of years ago. And they were the primary builders. So they were so skilled at building, they were eventually, by the power of dynamics, in the unfoldment of the yugas, and they were, say, hijacked and enslaved, and they were forced to build things. So they built one of the versions of our moon. They built different kinds of satellites and planetoids. They built structures, and they also built power centers. And Bosnia is one of those power centers. Now, that is a power center, not just because of those pyramids. So we would have never found out the stuff that we found out if we didn't go there in person and actually get to talk to a local and get to know the area on that level. So Bosnia was the former capital of the Ottoman Empire when it was the primary governing body of that region. And all of the royalty of the Ottoman Empire were actually coronated at a ancient temple in the village of Visoko, which is where the pyramids are. So it's been a power center for a very long time in history, and it's so ancient that nature took it back over and grew a forest over these structures. When you take these structures, when you take the forests and stuff from the structure and you look at it, it's actually highly sophisticated, and it's more sophisticated than the crystal technology used to build the Egyptian pyramids. You know how that creates a lot of conflict within the circles of scholars to study this stuff, because the science is beyond what they can accept. But those of us in the mystical realms, we understand and have memories of using crystal technology. Okay, so it's not a far stretch for us at all to understand that the pyramids were built, the Egyptian pyramids were built using crystal technology. It was a different kind of technology used by the ant people. It's not, they use some aspects of the crystal technology, but a lot of it was through, how do you say that? Creating density. So the layers that create those pyramids is actually baked ceramic clay in irregular shapes and depths and stuff like this. And it's quite an interesting phenomena. The energy there, so there's a collective energy that has to be in place for I'm mutilating his name. All right, we'll just say Dr. O. there's a consciousness grid that's all around there, and they only can reach the resonance to access the records that the Bosnian pyramids hold when they are open to that resonance. Okay, so part of the journey of us getting to Bosnia, we could not just go to the pyramid. We had to go to the different anchoring points of different consciousness grids and unwind things. Not that we knew exactly what we were doing at the time, because we had no idea. It was completely intuitive, and we're just doing what we do. And it was a beautiful, graceful experience, and I look forward to someday getting back there. And we went to we started everything in Split, Croatia, where the original Temple of Jupiter is. This is the Temple of Jupiter that was built by the ancient Romans. It was a master-built structure long before Christianity, long before, it was several thousand years old. And then it was taken over by Christianity. So that was where we started, was unraveling the different anchorings that was of what was holding that consciousness grid there. And it was tightly associated with the hijacking of Christianity and stuff like this. But so anyway, we unraveled all that stuff, did this other kind of travel, and finally got there. Had a really great experience resonating and doing the dance of the planets. And once we were there, that's where we were unraveling that same consciousness grid, but on more of a planetary level. And then 2 weeks after we left, they discovered a whole nother tunnel system in the pyramid complex of Bosnia. So I know it was a long way. I didn't tell the story very well. Sorry, I never told the story like this. But what I'm saying is that resonance, they need to be able to touch that resonance with their awareness in order to access it. And whatever unraveling that was going on that collective level that we and all these other beings were helping us with, that shifted. So now those veils, that the possibility of opening to that resonance is more available. And then, boom, he expanded into it. They expanded into it as a whole team of scientists studying that pyramid complex. And then they went to a whole nother level, This is that thing about resonance. Your mind doesn't need to know anything. It's just a matter of that resonance being possible. That is what opens us up. That's what opens us up to new ideas, to epiphanies, to things that we never imagined possible before. It's all about that resonance match and stepping into the consciousness stream. I hope this makes sense what I'm saying. Let me know. All right. So, I want to talk about the blind spots of the ages, because this is such a big deal. This is why so many people get jaded. And I suspect why so many people get jaded. Again, this is only my own take on this stuff. All right, so the Kali Yuga. So Hale mentioned some interesting things in that movie, and one of them was that it was a rule being set by the consciousness unfolding within the Kali Yuga. The Kali Yuga, again, is that last age, that last age of the grander cycle. And one of those rules is that the consciousness, the humanity, could not be aware of ETs. They cannot be aware of interstellar travel and UFOs and all that stuff, even though it's an intricate part of our history and how we got here, that they couldn't know. And so the dawning of the Kali Yuga eliminated all ET interactions with the human consciousness. Okay, so it was like a rule, right? So ships could be in the air and you couldn't see them. All the ships that were crash landed in the different regions of the planet, all those ships became instantly petrified. Those of you guys know exactly some spots that came in your mind where that's so, right? That's the power of the star elders, the ancients, the ones that are the outer nesting doll holders of these yugas. Okay, they made a decision. The decision happened, and then we all experience the repercussions of that decision. Now, the jaded part that I want to talk about is that, so like all those blind spots were put onto us, right? So as we are submerging into the Kali Yuga, no matter how many times we're incarnating in these yugas, we're forgetting, we're having to go through all those veils into forgetfulness. And those veils that are put in place are the ones from the outer nesting doll beings. And as they choose differently, or as a different age is to come, all those veils lift up and we start over again from zero, from unity, and we go back in through the yugas. Now, the jadedness comes in is when people wake up to those blind spots and they feel a sense of injusticeness, sense of injustice was delivered, recognizing that there is a being that is not God, but we think is God and are told is God, that is making these decisions that influence us when we're in the Yuga. And the thing is that we don't, we're jaded until we're not. What makes us not so jaded when we wake up to our actual agreement that we negotiated and made with these beings to allow us to experience the Yugas. Okay, so we willingly participated, we willingly created an agreement, whether we're aware of it or not, to enter the battle of good and evil, to enter the dance of dark and light. Okay, many of us were excited and honored and did it out of deep compassion and love. Okay, that's why we originally did it. Once you're there, the forgetfulness is so strong, you might participate in several more yugas than you maybe intended initially, and at that point, it's very easy to get out of it. It's just a matter of waking up out of the matrix of the yuga and finding that aspect of yourself and the being you made the agreement with and having that exchange, showing them that you have woken, downloading all the experiences and wisdom between the both of you. And once that's full circle, now you have that opportunity to exit the Yuga cycles. It's funny. I went a completely different direction than I intended to go when I started this. Okay. So again, you're here because you're designing everything that's going on, whether you're aware of it or not. Our ego driver is the one that's in separation from source. Our ego driver is the one that needs and preserves our separation. But as soon as our heart field becomes strong, stronger in these past life memories, or even these other interactions with exospecies start doing their work, and through experiencing them, that heart field becomes stronger, and the ego driver no longer is the king of the castle anymore. Instead, your spirit, your inner knowing, your infinite level of your being becomes more of the king of the castle, or the emperor within the vessel. You can open your DNA, you can do all sorts of things. Especially now, it is way faster than it's ever been before, because we're at that time between cycles. All of these veils are getting lifted. So all of us who have a yes to exit the yugas can now. Okay. And this will be so for the next 1,000 years. So don't worry, there's no big rush unless there is, of course, for whatever reason. So these are very long cycles. Okay. Very long cycles. And if you want to take a couple lifetimes to wake up, then you can. If you want to do it in one lifetime, you can. And, it's like I said, it's not your ego driver making that decision. It's your deep core inner self, your infinite being, that's making that decision. Okay. And the rest of it's falling into place. Mm-hmm. All right. Ooh, I went through that in perfect timing. Wonderful. Hello. All right, dear. Thank you so much for the background, your explanation. Thank you, Joanne. Okay, thank you. And do those agreements also go for SSPs? Okay, can you decode that anagram that for me? I don't know what SSP means. I'm so grateful. Thank you. I'm taking off my victim pants and getting going. That's awesome. Yeah. Oh yeah. Those victim stories are intense sometimes. That really holds us into certain patterns that we don't even recognize until we do, of course. And so with those blind spots, I didn't finish the blind spot thing. So the rules that get made for each of these yugas, right? Those are blind spots that are implanted within the experience. So this is why humans need to wake up beyond the cosmic mind. You need to get beyond the galactic, beyond the cosmic, and wake up to who you are beyond that. Then you're liberated. You're liberated from all this, right? And it's not like, you're walking on water and turning lead into gold. Well, unless you are, of course, which, hey, I can't wait to be witness to that. You're being human. in this experience. And I'll wrap up with this story. And this is such a crazy story. I was hesitant to share it. So, I just do things, and I don't know why I do them. This has been a theme throughout my life. So I was younger. I would just make things, and my hands would just start doing things, and later in life, I realized that there were some really cool things that my hands were making and doing that I really didn't understand. It took someone else watching what I was doing and seeing the result of it to open me up to me doing something than just something random. And one of the things is that if you sit me in front of some crystals, well, you sit me in front of anything telluric, rocks or whatever, and I just let my hands do what they want to do. Usually I end up creating some kind of grid where it opens up portals and stuff like this. Now this is knowledge in my subconscious that just comes out. So one of the strange things, many strange things, that's like one of many examples, but I would be drawn to do things. I would be drawn to do strange things, like my name. When I sign my name, I figure out a way to sign my name where the T, I would sign my name as a Christ, Christ, right? And I would sign it, and somehow I was able to make my T, I was able to cross my T like a big star at the end of my name. So my name was Christ, and the T made a big star. And on legal documents, that's how I sign my stuff. That's my signature. And it wasn't until way later did I make that connection, after I had a vision of my mom. So, all right, so my mom was, she had some stuff going on, and there was a near-death experience while she was pregnant with me. And there was a memory that came forward about that. And I remember helping her with the decision to live, and when I was born, I remember my dad telling me that she knew what my name was and she was not going to waver. It was like he didn't have any say on what he was going to name me, and she just decided, and that was naming me Christina, right? And so further on down, fast forward a few more years, I actually get to have a conversation with her. This was after she passed, of course, where she told me that she knew that when I was born that I carried the frequency of the Christos, of the Christ, and that's why she called me Christina. Now, at the time, I was rather jaded to any kind of religious references because it's all a control system. You can imagine, a fired up indigo, right? It's all a control system. But then as I grew more and more and more, I made those connections, and I realized that she was talking about that moment, where that near-death moment that she had, where I remember helping her choose to live. Right. There was something very significant in the exchange between us. So when I came through into a body, she recognized me with all of her being. Now, my mom was a very, she was brought up in very traditional Christian circles. And one of those ideas is to be like a dependent with your spouse, like the man's the boss of the house and all this stuff. So for her to like make a stance like that and not give him any choice is very, very rare. That's not something that happened a lot with them. Well, eventually, because they divorced. But anyway, so there's this thread that I just have, I'm not saying I'm Christ. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm saying is that there's a consciousness stream that all of us en masse is being made available. Okay. So those avatars that were a individual manifestation at this time are here to be a en masse manifestation. I have a thread of it. You have a thread of it. All of us here have a thread of it. It's just a matter of letting those threads come in, stepping into those consciousness streams and letting those downloads and those transmissions transpire and unpacking them. Because as we unpack them, our consciousness expands, and we can allow that consciousness stream to inform our here and now moment and the actions that we take and the things that we create. So you guys heard about, art is channeling. Exactly like that. Okay. You're unpacking these transmissions, these encodements by taking action, writing song, doing whatever the creative means is that you do. And that helps your conscious mind touch these pieces So you can have that information to your access at will. It's part of your understanding of the world. It informs the things that you're perceiving. So, right. So when we first come to this world within the old paradigm, our lenses of perception get narrowed down more and more and more as we grow. And if we become more closed down in our heart and bitter, then that scope becomes even more narrow. But as we open and our hearts open, our capacity of compassion opens more and more and more. Now we're doing the opposite of that scoping, and instead we're opening it, and now we can have access to these other levels of our being, informing our here and now. It's a truth that lives inside of us. We take action on that truth and it manifests like this. Yeah. I think that's the best way I can describe it now. All right. Thank you guys. This is awesome. All Christ or all not Christ. Right. So yeah, that is exactly why I stay away from the whole Christos narrative, because it's such a polarized story that if you have a Christ, that means you have an Antichrist. And that's exactly why I stay away from this kind of language, because it does not serve the point of the truth I'm trying to convey, that consciousness stream. Our programming is so heavy duty. It's beyond what we're aware of. We've not only inherited our programming from our ancestors, not that it's any fault of their own, right? We've inherited this programming of trauma, we've inherited PTSD, we've inherited religious beliefs, we inherited curses, we inherited, shamings and guilt trips, all the stuff we inherited. It's not really the truth to who we are, so that's why when I talk about things, I do my best not to touch on things that have old threads that go back to those old program narratives, because then now we're going to want to qualify them as one or the other. And that does a disservice to the understanding for me. Our language that we use is changing and evolving constantly, because our relationship to things is changing and evolving constantly. So the old way of explaining things eventually reaches expiration. It doesn't work for us anymore. It's no longer a close enough resonance match so then we start looking for other language, other words to start describing the vibrations that we're trying to convey. I hope that's helpful, darling. All right. Interesting about the crossing the T. I do the same, but it looks like a Yuga. Oh, cool. Yeah, it does. Like the loop on the lower right-hand corner of it looks like a Yuga. Yeah. I totally can see that when you say it. Awesome. All right. Cool. All right, guys. I'm going to wrap up here. So thank you for being a part of, oh my gosh, I do want to talk about the secret space programs. I'm out of time. So let's put that on the docket for next week. Thank you, dear Facebook user, for mentioning that. Because that's part of all of this game. Really, it's so thick. It's so dynamic. It's amazing. But yeah, I want to talk about that, because that's something really significant for humans at the moment, though they don't realize it. All right, darlings. So if you want to dive deeper into this work, dive deeper into unraveling these intuitive blind spots and awaken to who you are on more levels than you're aware of currently, I encourage you guys to check out lightbodyacademy.com. We have some excellent programs in there that they'll unravel things so quickly for you. It starts off with the Dreamtime Healing Project, and then you can graduate into the Healer Acceleration Lab. The work is profound. It's amazing. And we have such a great group of people. The way that people show up, we're super effective at exponentially expediting that unraveling of the blind spots, so you can wake up to really what the truth is for you. And the most beautiful thing is, it's about you deciding your truth. It's not about someone telling you what the truth is and you got to believe it. We're not into that. It's about you waking up to your own truth and what's being shared with you by your own inner levels, your own infinite being. That's the goal there. All right, darlings. Thank you for being here. I shall see you guys next week. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Adios.